Hello everyone, this is Amit Latigra. In this video, I'm demonstrating a nested if statement. In my previous video, I explained about if else ladder, where we are having a multiple conditions and out of those one can be true at a time. In this video, it's about nested if. Nested if statement is basically a situation where we are going to evaluate certain conditions based on previously assessed condition. So in general, it is a condition within the condition. So nested condition. Example, I want to check whether my number is in the range of 11 to 20 or not. So in this case, I can check whether my number is greater than 10. Say yes. I want to check one more time whether it is less than 21. Yes. Then it is in the range of 10 to 11 to 20. The same thing can be done using a compound condition, which I will discuss in subsequent videos. But the very basic way to use if within if, that is a nested if, which I am relating with this example. Another example, what I want to do, I want to check whether a number is odd or even. This is the first condition I want to check. Whatever it is, whether it is a odd or an even. Another thing I want to check in any of the case, whether number is divisible by 5 or not. So this is also a nested if. First, I can check whether number is odd or even, and second condition is whether it is divisible by 5 or not. So there are number of examples where we can use one condition within the another condition, and it is basically the nested if. One more real-time example. I'm having one subject mark, and I want to assign it to a grade along with pass and fail. So first we can check whether the subject mark is, for example, if passing percentage are 35, so greater than or equivalent to 35, this is my first condition. If true, then further we can map it with various grades like A, B, C, D, and E. So here also we require one condition within the another one. So it is basically a nested if, can be achieved using nested if. In this video, I am going to use a nested if along with the flowchart and its execution in Scratch for finding a maximum number out of 3 entered numbers. So here I am explaining this scenario using a very basic kind of if statements based on the previous videos what I've recorded in the same series. But same program we can optimize by using the other features which I will demonstrate in subsequent videos. This is one of the possible solutions. What I want to do, I want to find which number is maximum, whether it is number 1 or number 2 or number 3. Out of 3 numbers, I want to find the maximum number. So how can we achieve this? So very basic formula I am going to use here. Let's check first a relation among number 1 and number 2. So is number 1 is greater than number 2? Even we can use number 1 is greater than or equivalent to number 2, but I'm using very basic formula as I said, number 1 greater than number 2. If this is true, meaning out of number 1, and number 2, number 1 is greater than. So subsequently, based on this, if this is true, we can check it with number 3. Is number 1 greater than number 3? If this is also true, meaning number 1 is greater than number 2 as well as greater than number 3. So in this case, my number 1 is maximum. By chance, this situation results in false, meaning out of number 1 and number 2, at this place, number 2 is the maximum. So we can check it with number 3. If this is false, meaning number 2 is greater than number 1 and number 2 is greater than number 3 as well. So here number 2 is maximum. What if this is false? Number 1 is not greater than number 3. This results as false. So here number 1 is a true. Number 1 is greater than number 2 is a true, meaning number 1 is maximum out of 1 and 2. And here number 1 is not greater than number 3 and it is already greater than number 2. So in this case, number 3 is nothing but the maximum out of 3. Similar way, what if this is false? So here number 1 is greater than number 2 is false, meaning number 2 is the greater one compared to 1 and 2. And here number 2 is less than number 3. So as already number 2 is greater than number 1 but less than number 3. So in this situation also number 3 is the maximum one. As I discussed earlier, the same thing we can optimize further using relational operators, so that I will discuss in subsequent videos along with relational operator along with logical operator. So that I will discuss in subsequent videos. But let's consider the situation with the scenario, whatever I have discussed as such. So let's create a flowchart for this. To start a program, let's have a start symbol. What we require is input from the user. So let's take input as number 1, number 2, and number 3 to check which number is the maximum out of entered 3 numbers. Let's check a very first situation by evaluating a condition, that is number 1 greater than number 2? Even we can use greater than and equal. Because here in this case, if both numbers are equal, then number 2 considered as a maximum. So even we can use greater than and equal. So in that case, number 1 considered as a maximum. So here let's use the same thing. 2 possibilities. Either it is true or it is false. Let's check what if this is true. So we need to evaluate one more time. Is number 1 is greater than number 3? What if this is also true? What if this is false? Let's consider a true part. So number 1 is greater than number 2. It is true. Number 1 is greater than number 3. This is also true. So in this case, we need to display number 1 as maximum. So we need to display number 1 on screen. What if this is false? Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. So we need to display number 1 on screen. What if this is false? Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 on screen. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 on screen. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum. Then we need to display number 1 as maximum number 3 on screen as maximum number. What if this is false? In this case, again a condition is number 2 greater than number 3. Again, two possibilities. Let's here consider false and let's here consider as a true. So in this case, number 1 is greater than number 2, but number 2 is not greater than number 3. So in this case, number 3 is a maximum. So if it is false, we need to display number 3. But if it is true, number 1 is greater than number 2 is false, meaning number 2 is greater than number 1 and number 2 is also greater than number 3. So in this case, we need to display on screen value of number 2 as the maximum one. After displaying number, basically we are concluding a program. So stop part. So this is a very simple flowchart to find maximum number out of 3. Here I use nested if. So one condition, whether it is a true or a false, we are checking one more condition. Even in true part, we are checking condition, not in a false in any of the situation, then also it is a nested if. So this is a nested if. Let's check how it works using our Scratch. So what we require is we require 3 variables. So let's create those 3 variables is number 1, number 2, and number 3. So let me create 3 variables here, number 1, number 2, and number 3. And we need to take values from the user. So let's have a message, enter number 1, and let's set it as a number 1, whatever the answer entered by the user. So this is the block. We need to duplicate this block. Same situation for number 2. So let's set it to a number 2 and let's duplicate one more time for number 3. Let's assign answer to number 3. So at this point of time, our number 1, number 2, and number 3 we have entered from the we have asked the user to enter and we are receiving answer from the user. So whatever the prompt entered by the users, we are going to store it in number 1, number 2, number 3 respectively. Now what we require is branch control. So basically it is a control one. What we require is this block, that is if and else. As per our flowchart, we require if and else both part. So here the conditions. So very first condition. So for that what we require is operator. So let me use very first block. What exactly it is, let's detach it for time being. Is my number 1 greater than number 2? Two possibilities, true and false. True, false. Let's first consider true part. So one more condition, again two possibilities, true and false. So let's duplicate it and let's put it here. Second is number 1 is greater than number 3. Again two possibilities, true, false. In else block, again we are having possibilities by considering a condition is number 2 greater than number 3 So here we don't require number 1, we require number 2. So this is simple block arrangement. Number 1 is greater than number 2. Yes, it is a true. So one more condition, nested if number 1 is greater than number 3. Say yes. So let's display a message by joining a details is value of number 1 is maximum. Let's duplicate it. Another possibility is not number 1, but number 2 is maximum. And one more possibility is number 3 is maximum. So we are having these 3 possibilities. Either number 1 or number 2 or number 3. So if this is true, I need to display a message number 1 is maximum. If it is false, my number 3 is maximum. Else, if number 2 is greater than number 3, so number 2 is maximum, else number 3 is maximum. So whatever the flow chart I've explained, I converted into the logical blocks here. And let's try to check in output. Let's run it. So there is a prompt, enter number 1. Let me enter 65. Number 2, that is 95. And number 3, 135. So message is 135 is maximum. That is number 3. Let's execute one more time. Number 1, 65. Number 2, 25. And number 3, 10. So in this case, 65 is maximum. Let's execute one more time. Number 1, 10. Number 2, 85. Number 3, 45. So 85 is maximum. So here I used nested if structure to find the maximum out of 3 numbers. I hope you enjoyed this video. In subsequent videos, I'll discuss a loop control statements, a repetition block, and afterwards more complex programs with appropriate solution in terms of flowchart and logical blocks using Scratch. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching this video. Have a good time ahead.